More than 4 years after our world shut down during the pandemic, the government has released its final report on how the U.S. responded to COVID-19. A House Select Subcommittee spent 2 years conducting dozens of interviews and reviewing more than 1 million documents. You'll remember the handling of this pandemic got political. Republicans and Democrats, well, they couldn't agree on school lockdowns, mask mandates, or vaccine protocols, just to name a few. And wouldn't you know it, the subcommittee in charge of finding the truth right now, yep, they're once again divided right down party lines. So here are some of the key takeaways. According to Republicans on this select subcommittee, COVID-19 likely emerged from a lab leak in China, a theory that Dr. Fauci repeatedly criticized and as a result was labeled a conspiracy theory. Republicans also found that mask mandates were ineffective at controlling the spread of the virus, and lockdowns caused more harm than good to our economy, our overall health, and child development. And remember that 6 feet of separation rule? Well, the subcommittee, or the Republicans on that committee, found that wasn't supported by science. And then there was Operation Warp Speed, which accelerated the development, manufacturing, and distribution of COVID vaccines. It was considered successful, the operation, but the subcommittee disagrees with the FDA's pressuring its senior staff to accelerate full approval of vaccines when they had concerns. All right, well, the Democrats on this committee, they do not agree with their colleagues' findings, and they released their own much smaller report than the Republican subcommittee. Okay, so the Republicans issued a 520-page report. You see it right here, 520 pages. While the Democrats, yes, they released their own. It's a 57-page report. Now, in this report, the Democrats hit back at the Republican findings. For example, they strongly defend Dr. Fauci. They say the virus's origin is still unknown, and they also stand by the CDC's recommendations to close our schools. So how did the Republicans reach their conclusions and Democrats reach their own? Here to help us answer that question tonight is Chairman of the Select Subcommittee, Ohio Congressman Brad Wenstrup. Congressman, we've been waiting years to see these findings, but now we're told even the subcommittee can't agree on the results. So what message does that send to us, the American people?
Well, I would advise people to read both of the reports and read ours. I mean, I would tell you there isn't one thing in our report that the full committee, bipartisan, had access to. Every letter we sent, it was shared. Every response we got, it was shared. Every transcribed interview that we did, it was shared. Everything along the way was shared. And I want to point something out, and people will notice it if they read these things. We don't mention political party one time. And one time I got asked about that, and I said, the people that we were investigating and looking at, I don't know what party they're in. So I was doing everything I possibly could to make this a straightforward investigation, give the American people the results, and we did that in 520 pages.
So for context for our viewers, there are 9 Republicans on this subcommittee, including you, and 7 Democrats. Why are you confident that you and your colleagues, at least on the Republican side, got it right?
Well, people can read the report. We got it right because it was based on testimony, not just hypothesis or not just a conclusion. But I will tell you, when it comes to the origins of the lab leak theory, the forensics were far more present for a lab leak theory. Look, you had the people that Dr. Fauci wrote an article with, basically. They said Dr. Fauci prompted them to write an article. These were all scientists that did gain-of-function research. They said that the COVID-19 looked engineered, yet they wrote a paper that said it came from nature, and here's how. And Dr. Fauci brought that out on the White House lawn and said, oh, this just in. Well, he knew about it all along. The very day that Dr. Fauci put that article out on the White House lawn that said scientists were saying this came from nature, one of the very authors, Christian Anderson, in his emails that very day said, we still can't rule out that this is engineered. Mm-hmm. And they also had concerns about it being labeled as coming from the lab because they said it would disrupt international harmony. And can you imagine the S show that'll happen if legitimate people say that this may have come from the lab, that it may have come from the lab?
We heard so much at the time about conspiracy theories during the pandemic. And now it appears that your findings show that some of those theories were in fact true. Is that right?
Well, yeah, and to that point, Dr. Fauci and Dr. Collins, in their transcribed interviews, both who had said publicly that this is a conspiracy theory, and also said in their internal documents that it's a conspiracy theory that they need to put down. And we need to do everything we can to put this down. When we had them in for their transcribed interview, we asked them if it's a conspiracy theory. They said no. We asked them if a lab leak theory was a possibility. They said yes. Now, they said they've always had an open mind, but the record doesn't reflect that. They didn't always have an open mind. And when I asked Dr. Fauci if he looked at any of these scientific articles that I had, and I put the authors' names out there, did you ever talk to these authors who were explaining scientifically how COVID-19 could be made in a lab? He said he never talked to them. Well, that doesn't sound much like an open mind to me. So you can check that in the record true during the transcribed interview.
Ohio Congressman Brad Wenstrup, thank you, sir, for taking the time to walk us through this report tonight.